Okay, this lesson is chapter 9, Perek Tet of the Tanya. Last week and the week before, we learned the 7th and the 8th chapter that basically explains what happens to the world when a Jew doesn't do what he's supposed to do, or he does what he's not supposed to do. If he eats not kosher food, if he speaks in a way, acts in a way, thinks in a way that's against what the Torah says, that it causes a blemish in the upper worlds that he is responsible for. And that blemish can remain even after the Jew personally himself does tshuva and he returns and repents. And then, unless he does a very deep type of repentance from love. So we see that there's like the Babich already said, a Jew always has to look at three things. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. He says, if you look at three things, you won't come to do a sin. And then it explains what the three things are. So the Babich already points out that it was totally unnecessary to say, look at three things, when the very next sentence it explains what the three things are. Anyone knows it's three. So the Rebbe explained that no, what it means, that's a separate advice that's given by Pirkei Avot. Separate advice. It's saying a Jew should always look at three things. No matter what you do, no matter where you are, no matter what situation that you're in, you always should look at three things. Because as we said in the beginning of all these lessons, that the essential difference between a Jew and a non-Jew is the responsibility. Every human being, because he's a human being, is created by God with responsibility. And a non-Jew has a responsibility to improve the world, to improve himself, to appreciate the world, to have a proper attitude toward the world, to have a proper attitude toward suffering, toward his family, toward making the world a better place, a more meaningful place, a more, if you want to call it, a happier place. But a Jew, his job is to make the world a blessed place, to make the world a holy place, that the world should be exactly the way the Creator wants it to be. So a Jew always feels this obligation to the Creator, and even if he's not aware of it, this obligation to the Creator is called the godly soul, and he feels it down deep. Maybe an example that I can think of is on the other side. They say that Napoleon, he was put into exile, and he lost battles after battles. He was put into exile, and he escaped from exile. And he came back to France, and as soon as he did, suddenly all the people in France, he had an army of 100,000 men within just a few days. In other words, it woke up something inside of them, some sort of loyalty, some sort of a obligation that he aroused in their souls, that they have to change the whole entire world. In his case, it was changing the world for the worst. In the name of liberty and fraternity and equality, to make wars and to kill millions of people. But to this day, he's revered as a person that he aroused inside of the souls of men the desire to change the world and to change themselves. Well, the fact is that really is the essence of man, is that to be responsible for the world, to be responsible for everything, but not in the way that Napoleon said. In fact, Napoleon's number one enemy was the first Rebbe of Chabad, the one who wrote this book. And when he got to the town, he conquered the town that the first Rebbe of Chabad lived in, the first thing he did was to send soldiers to get some item of the Rebbe so that he was a sorcerer and he knew magic, so that he could put some sort of a spell, a curse, or whatever. And the Rebbe knew this. The first Rebbe knew this, and he had ordered that his house be burnt down before Napoleon would get there. He knew that Napoleon would try to get something from him. Very strange story. But the point is, it says, like we're going to learn soon, we learned in the 6th chapter, that everything in holiness is from non-holiness, and we can learn from non-holiness a lot of things about the holiness. Like Reb Zusha of Anipoli said, you can learn 7 things from a thief. And really, like my teacher, Rabbi Mendel Futterfast, said that Rabbi Zusha of Anipoli said that because he didn't sit in prison for a long time. if he sat at all. But if he would have sat for a long time, like Reb Mendel Futafas did, for 5 years, 6 years, he said, you could know that you could learn thousands of things from a thief. One of the things that we can learn from this world and from things in this world, from evil leaders, is that man is responsible and he feels responsible. And this responsibility can be woken up for the good or for building or for the opposite. A Jew is responsible to three things. He's responsible to God. Look at three things: God, the world, and himself. God is the source, the creator, the source of all being, the source of all meaning. The world is God's creation. God created it in order that we should put meaning here, and we're in the middle. It all depends on us. It all depends on our free will. If we're going to make this world into what God wanted it, a place where the essence of God was revealed, like something like the Holy Temple, but even more. So in the first chapters of the Tanya, we discussed what exactly a Jew is. In the 7th and the 8th chapter, we discussed what the world is. The world meaning the physical and the spiritual. And now in this chapter, we're going to discuss the battle between them. So the first chapters discussed what a Jew is and what God is. The 7th and the 8th chapter discussed what is called Klippa, what creation is. And now we're going to talk about the battle that goes inside of each and every Jew. In order to do our job, it's necessary to make a battle, a fight, a war. This is a book as a workbook. And every minute, every instant of our life that we're being created by the Creator, is we have this obligation to the Creator, to the world, and to ourselves. The Creator, the world, and ourselves is demanding from us. It's calling to us. It's requesting to us. It's begging us to wake up and to start changing ourselves and the world around us. And even God, like we said, Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will. Prayer changes God's will. But it's a huge battle, and the battle goes on inside of us. Inside of us. And this is one reason why it is forbidden and foolish to blame others for any of the problems or faults that are in the world. The only one to blame for everything there is in the world is only ourselves. How we react. Or another way of saying, nothing happens to us, everything happens for us. Will the world have an effect on us, or will we affect the world? Will our egotistical nature have an effect on us, or will we affect it? Let's see. Every Jew has what's called two souls, or like we discussed before, really three souls. One soul is totally neutral. It has no nature of its own. That's called the intellectual soul. The intellectual soul wants only the truth. The animal soul, the natural soul of a Jew, tries to convince what's called the intellectual soul that it's the truth, and it brings a lot of facts to prove it. If you eat not kosher food, you feel good. If you drive your motorcycle on Shabbat, you feel good. Even worse, most of the sins that are in the Torah, a person feels good when he does it. Some people don't like this type of sin, they like other types of sins. On the other hand, to do the commandments, a lot of times is very difficult. People scoff at you. You're ostracized. There's peer pressure. A lot of times you have to give up on certain pleasures that you have, certain desires. One of the most difficult commandments of the Torah, and the whole Torah depends on it, is love every Jew like yourself. And from that comes the ability to love every human being like yourself. But how do you say love starts at home? To love every Jew as yourself is very easy if everybody does things that please you. But if they don't, then you have to really, how do you say, bite the bullet. You have to overlook a lot of bad things. Just like you overlook bad things in yourself. And the other person, but this is not natural. It's so pleasant to point the finger and blame others. Therefore, there's a big battle going on inside of every single Jew. The battle is over the body, or in spiritual terms, you can call it the intellectual soul. Which are you going to be? Who are you going to be? It's something like, I'll give you an example. Something like, let's say, a thief, a murderer, that he also is a very tremendously intelligent person. And he can use his intelligence to be a doctor, a brain surgeon. If he wants to be a brain surgeon, he chooses he wants to be a brain surgeon, or he can be the head of the hospital. If he chooses he wants to be a criminal, he can be the head of the criminals. Like we have the story in the Talmud of Reish Lakish, that he was the head of the thieves. And Rabbi Yochanan convinced him that he can be one of the great heads of the Torah Academy. He convinced him and he changed his mind. But let's look at this a little bit closely. This man, Reish Lakish, when he's a thief, suddenly comes into his mind ideas how to steal, where to put his men, which house to steal from, how to get into the window, how to evade the police, how to bribe the police, how to bribe the judges. His mind is working like a criminal. And the ideas come to him, they flow into him. Like some people, they're stand-up comedians, ideas just come. They just have a natural ability to do it. Others are musicians, just musical ideas come to them. Same thing, this person comes to him, ideas of thievery. As soon as he decided, he made a decision, I want to be devoted to God, to the Torah, to make this world a good place, a better place, instead of just making myself happy. I want to make God happy. As soon as he did that, then all sorts of different ideas came into his mind. How to understand this Talmud, what God wants me to do over here, how to love God better, how to fear God better, how to have more faith in God. A whole different, it's like two different people. Says the Tanya, each and every one of us is two different people. Each and every one of us has what's called a natural soul, and from it comes a flow of natural ideas. Other people, on the other hand, inside of us also is what's called a godly soul. A godly soul comes to us also all sorts of godly ideas and feelings, as we're going to explain now. Let's begin. Hine, makom mishkan nefesh ba'amit, the place in your body where the animal soul dwells, or the natural soul, if you will. Shemiklipas noga, that comes from, we discussed before in the 7th chapter, which comes from this idea of shining klippa, or shining creation. It's part of the creation, but it's shining. What does it mean it's shining? That it has the ability to reveal godliness. Bakol ish Yisrael, who believe is in the heart. Now this implies that you can take your heart, because it's what's called klippat noga. It has the ability to transform, to shine godliness. The heart can be transformed to a godly heart, like in our story with Reish Lakish. But meanwhile, the place, the tendencies and urges of a human being, of a Jew, is in the heart. Natural. A child, when he's born, he immediately wants to eat, he wants to sleep. He wants what's good for himself. This is the heart. The chalal samoli, shehu malei dam, which is filled with blood. The kativ dam hu nefesh. Like it says, the blood is the soul. This was talked about also in the 1st chapter of the Tanya, that the soul is a spiritual thing, the body is physical, the link between the two of them is the blood. Blood has a spiritual part, a semi-spiritual part, which is called heat, and it also has if you want to call it a semi-physical part, which is the liquid. That links the animal soul to the body. Lochen, therefore, call ataivas, all desires, vis paros, and all of braggery, the kas, and anger, the domain, all these natural things that come up naturally. The Greeks, the Romans had gods for these things. They worshipped them. God of beauty, the God of war, God of desire. Because they don't know where they come from. Where do they come from? It's just a miraculous thing that seems to come from nowhere, all these desires. Because it's a soul. It's a spiritual thing that manifests itself physically. They are in the heart, just like the blood is. Umealev, and from the heart, the animal soul, mitpashtot, these desires, these feelings spread out in all the body. The agam ola lemoach, and also goes up to the brain of the head. When a person has a desire, when a person is angry, so he feels his angry, then it goes up to his mind, and he starts to think, how can I best do this? Right? If I burn my next door neighbor's house down, then they'll catch me. So maybe I can hire somebody else to burn it down. Maybe they'll catch him. Maybe that's a little bit drastic. Maybe it's a little drastic. Maybe I should get him out of the house. As he's thinking all these thoughts, his mind is trying to figure out ways to express his anger. Or maybe he goes to some sort of a seminar, some sort of a course, how to win friends and influence people, and it teaches him, no. Why are you angry? Because you want to benefit. You want to get this person out of your way because he interferes with you. In other words, what do you want in the end? You want to benefit yourself. Well, anger will not benefit you. The customer is always right. Look at from the other guy's point, then you will benefit. In other words, everything is for you. That is the essence of the animal soul. The animal soul thinks, how can I benefit? How can I please myself? It could be that the animal soul will convince him you should do Torah, you could do mitzvahs. One day you're going to die, you're going to go to heaven. It's pure animal soul. It has nothing to do with God. Therefore, first of all, there's an urge in the person's heart from his animal soul, and this urge goes up to the brain to think about it, or the heart here, and to think more deeply about it, or his chacham bam, and even get more deeply, to think more deeply, that it becomes part of the person. Yes, this is who I'm going to be. He thinks deeply about it. Yes, I will be a good thief. I have kamo adam, just like blood. Makoro belev, the places in the heart of me'alev, and from the heart, mispashet, it spreads out to all the limbs. V'gam ola lemoach shabarosh, and it also goes up to the brain in the head. Man is called Homo sapiens. Sapiens means he thinks. He has the ability to outsmart the animals, the lower animals. He can tame horses and tame the world. He can tame, but he's doing it all for himself. That's called the animal soul, the natural soul. Oh. Hine, behold, Makom Makom Mishkan Nefesh Eloki is the place where the godly soul is found, who is B'mochin Shabarosh. The godly soul is found in the brain. Something like when a person goes to heaven. What happens when after a person dies? It says, we'll talk about this in a minute. But after a person dies, so the soul, it says, gets pleasure. Go to heaven, heaven's pleasure. This is heaven. Gets pleasure. What type of pleasure does the soul get in heaven? I mean, there's no body. You can't see a movie where your team wins. You become elected president of the United States. You become the champion boxing. That's pleasure. Those type of pleasures you can't get in heaven. What type of pleasure is there in heaven? It says the pleasure that there is in heaven is the pleasure of awareness. Of awareness. Even these lower pleasures that we're talking about, becoming president of the United States or winning, this is all awareness. It's just awareness. A person puts everything together. Yes, to be president is good. To winning $1 million is good. If someone convinces you, no, if you win this $1 million, a mafia is going to kill you tomorrow, then he won't want to win the $1 million. It's all in the person's mind. But of course, it has to be attached. It comes from the physical world. The physical world chips off this pleasure. Well, in heaven, the pleasure is not tripped off by anything. It's just pure pleasure. And it comes through thought, wisdom, awareness. Awareness. Says the Rebbe that that's the idea of the godly soul. The godly soul is in the brain. The brain and the head. Umisham, and from there, mispashet, that spreads out, the kol levurim, to all the limbs. In other words, how can you possibly be excited about God? Where does this pleasure come from? The pleasure comes from your awareness, intellectual awareness of God. Therefore, in order to get excited about God, you have to sort of quiet down all the static that comes from your body, from your desires. You have to sort of turn off a little bit, at least for a short amount of time, because you have to remember, our goal here is not to kill our animal desires. It's not to kill our heart, to make us people that are zombies, spiritual zombies. There are some religions in the East let's say that if you have to completely leave the world is a bad place. It's just a place of it's a big fake out. It's a big what do they call it? Illusion. And get out of the world. Don't get married. Don't have nothing. That's not Judaism. Judaism says the world is potentially a wonderful place, infinitely more meaningful and wonderful than heaven is. Heaven, you get pleasure, but in this world, you can give God pleasure. That can only be revealed by intellect, by thinking about it, because the world itself screams out that there is no God, there's no creator, all there is me. The only way that the godly soul works is, first of all, through the brain, through the mind. We'll learn that there's the essence of the heart, we'll see. Through the mind. That's Chabad Hasidut, by the way. Chachma, Bina, V'dat. Chachma means conception, Bina is understanding, and Das means realization. Chabad. It's all intellect attaching yourself to the truth that really all there is God. God is creating everything, and is creating everything for a purpose. It says the place of the godly soul is in the brain. And from the brain it spreads out to all the limbs. The person puts on tefillin, he does commandments, and also in the heart. Oh. The godly soul is also found in the heart, but it's dormant in the heart. And it has to have the brain to wake it up. The emotions of the godly soul are found in the heart. But not like the animal soul, that the animal soul is awake in the heart. The godly soul is dormant in the heart. It's quiet. It's non-existent, seemingly. In the right side of the heart, ein bo dam, there is no blood. Like it says, leiv chacham, the heart of a wise man, and here we have the idea of being wise, wisdom again, is the awareness of the Creator, is on the right side. What is this? How does this express itself? What is this godliness in the right side of your heart, this godly soul? Well, you'll be surprised. This is action. Action. How do you say? Volatile is not the word. Maybe it is the only word I can think of. like an eruption of feelings, of emotions. Like a person who has not seen his father, he's not seen his mother for years, he's longing for them. And suddenly he sees that they've come out of the prison. He loves them so much. There's no way he can hug them enough, no way that he can express his happiness. It's a totally spiritual thing. This is Ahavas Hashem, this is the love of God. Karishfei Shalahavas, like flaming fire. Mitlahavas, that flames up, believe in the heart. Maskilin, the people, the intellectual people who use their intellect in the proper way. Hamivinim, that understand, umizbonenim, and they contemplate bedatam asher b'mocham, in their feeling of reality that is in their brain, with the borim and things amorim asahava that arouse the heart. Maybe let's take an example. This person is longing for his father, right? His father has been in prison. He writes his father letters. He never gets any answers. Just once in a while somebody comes out from prison, or there's a sign that says your father is there, and he gets your letters. He wants you to know that he's thinking about you. Oh, he thinks another time. He wants to write his letter. Or people, let's say that they're, God forbid, they have a son or someone that was in a coma, and they come and they visit him every day, and they sit by his bedside years and years and years, and what, right? And suddenly wakes up, or suddenly his father gets back. But how do they do it? Not such a simple way. They have the son. They don't want to break it to the people suddenly. They put the son with a whole bunch of other people. When after a person's in a coma for a long time, you don't even recognize him. The same thing with the father. And they say, "Do you recognize this man?" No. Don't recognize him. You recognize this boy? No. It reminds me of my son in a coma. Reminds me. This man, well, look at him quickly. Look at him closely. Could it be this man is your father? I don't know. Last time I saw him was 40 years ago. Could it be that this boy is your son? I don't know. It could be. I mean, he was always asleep. He was always, his eyes closed. Well, the fact, think into it. Think. Could this possibly, he thinks, all of a sudden he realizes, so let me ask you a question. When we were 5 years old, I did something. What did I do? You put a fish in the washing machine. Yes, it's my father. Oh, suddenly, these emotions come. My father, this is my son. When you were 5 years old, you did. I put a fish. Oh, this is my son. In other words, what does he thinks about God? What does he think? He thinks about, where is God? He's hidden. He's in a coma. He's in prison. So you can't see him. Where is he? You feel God. You see God everywhere. All of a sudden you think, well, let's think about this. If God really exists, he creates everything. It means he creates everything. He creates me. Do you really feel this? No. Is it really true? That's das. Das means what's true, what you really feel. Is it really true? I don't know. It could be it's true. Maybe it's not true. If it really is true, it's really not. Well, there's a lot of really great people that believe this. Lubavitcher Rabbi Akiva, great men, really believed that God really exists and Moses got the Torah, took the Jews out of it. Could be God is really creating me right now. Yes, and God tells you you have responsibility. You're a Jew. What was it? The Torah. All of a sudden he starts to think, wow, Hashem, God really creates everything. He really creates everything. Yes, he creates, and he even creates your motorcycle, and you're like, what? My motorcycle is created by God. Starts to cry. That's meaningful to him. Oh, the motorcycle, when he gets the motorcycle, he sees it, it gives him a feeling like nothing else. This is my God. Suddenly he starts to weep, he starts to cry. Now I realize that the power of my motorcycle is when a person thinks into what God is and how God took us from Egypt, all the things that are mentioned in the prayers that we pray, suddenly what happens is his heart starts to really, it becomes real. It's like a check with your name on it, not somebody else's name. First you thought it was somebody else's name. Now it's your name. Ooh. All of a sudden you start thinking, all the money, what am I going to do? A person becomes suddenly inspired. It becomes like a volcano erupting. And also there's something even deeper. What is this godly soul? This is what was hidden in your heart. Simchas levav, the joy of your heart. B'tiferes Hashem, and the glory of God, v'hadar gaono, and the splendor of his greatness. Kasher eini chacham, like when the eyes of the wise man, asher barosho, that are in his head. What does it mean? B'moach chachmaso binaso, in his brain, the power of awareness of his conception and understanding. Mistaklim, gaze at the glory of Hashem. B'tiferes gdulaso, and the splendor of his infiniteness. Ad ein cheker ve'ein sof, without any searching, without any end. B'tachlis, like it explains in another place. This, in short, is what the Rebbe is saying, is what a tzaddik is. A tzaddik is a person that he has love, fear, faith in Hashem. His connection is constant because Hashem is everywhere. God is not just some angel up in the sky, and he's not a spirit that hovers over all being, a meaningless, emotionless, personalityless being of reality. No, it's not so. That God really cares, God really loves us. On the other hand, God is infinitely greater than anything we can call infinite. He creates the spiritual. When a Jew feels how infinitely far God is, and at the same time how infinitely close God is immediately there's all these positive emotions arouse. What's the difficulty? The difficulty is that he has to keep arousing it. It's not a thing that's constant, but there remains a trace inside of him. That we're going to learn in the 12th chapter. That's the Beinoni. The Beinoni has this trace that he remembers what God really is. He remembers how real God is, and that God is creating me. God loves me, is creating me. The king Shar Kalamidas, and also all the emotions, believe in the heart, they all come from Chachma, Bina, and Das in the brain. In other words, you have to start using your brain, and when you do use your brain and start to realize, to ask yourself a question, can this really be true that God is really creating me? That God is really creating all the spiritual worlds. He's creating everything constantly. He cares about every detail in the world, and every human being has a direct responsibility to the creator of the universe, and it's our job as Jews to tell everyone about this